Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we've got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. As you know, in the last few weeks I've been speaking a lot about these alleged discoveries under the pyramids of Giza, and I've recently noticed this video which was posted 2 weeks ago on the channel Project Unity called Exclusive: Meet the Scientists Behind the Massive Giza Plateau Discoveries. And as we look at the thumbnail, of course, we see Professor Filippo Biondi, and then the thumbnail reads, "I am 90% certain of what we are seeing," and these are, of course, his words. Before we start watching the video, I would like to give a brief introduction to the channel as I normally do, and it's going to be a neutral introduction. The channel is called Project Unity, a space for free flow of ideas on disruptive issues. 84,800 subscribers as of the recording of this video, 293 videos posted. The description is connecting curious minds. Full stop. As always, I would encourage you, viewers, to use your own critical thinking to formulate your own opinions when it comes to the channel and the validity of the information presented. The owner and presenter of the channel is this gentleman here called Jay Anderson. You may have seen him appear recently on Piers Morgan Uncensored, specifically to talk about these alleged findings. Now, despite of the 80,000 subscribers on that channel, Jay Anderson has a much bigger follower pool when it comes to Twitter/X, where he has pretty much 250,000 followers. However, one thing that I noticed is that whenever he speaks about these specific findings, he seems to be very categorical about them. See, for example, this instance here, when on his X, Jay Anderson says, "Share far and wide, you don't want to miss this," as he's telling us and reposting himself, telling us about this exclusive interview that we're going to watch together. However, one of the commentators underneath this post challenges him and says, "Keep in mind, it could be all hoax. Not saying it is, but there are some strange things," and then he uses, in order to validate this position, the video created by a fellow content creator, Sabine Hossenfelder. To which Jay Anderson responds, "It's not a hoax." I find myself in disagreement with Jay Anderson here when it comes to the categorical position that he appears to be taking on this matter. Note, for example, how much that differs from the position that I have assumed, which is a position of maybe there is something underneath the pyramids, maybe not. And I think that that is the one intellectually honest opinion and position that someone can have as we review the data that has been presented to us, but also as we keep in mind and take into consideration the people that are behind this discovery. More on that later. So personally, I still haven't formed my complete opinion on Jay Anderson and his work. I'm still waiting to see, maybe he'll change my mind, maybe he'll make a response videos that is respectful, and perhaps he will help me see things his way, and at that point I'll be like, you know what, Jay Anderson was right all along. But up to this point, this sort of categorical statement presented in the absence of evidence that could be sufficient in order to provide enough scientific and academic justification to the statement, I'm gonna say, I don't know, man, not impressed. However, since that level of certainty may be justified by this exclusive interview, let's watch some of it. Maybe I'll change my mind.
This is the world exclusive in the English world for the most earth-shattering discovery of the past. It might be the most earth-shattering discovery in history, and God knows what's going to happen after this.
With my technique, which is the maximum depthness that we can achieve?
He means what is the maximum depth that we can achieve. I'll help translating a little bit from his ideas, which I can see appear in his mind, because I'm of course a native Italian, so I know exactly the basic matrix that he is using, Professor Biondi, as he's trying to then translate in his head from Italian to English. I will provide some clarity therefore, just in case his English is not sufficient to correctly translate what's in his head, which I can absolutely retro-engineer by the English he ends up using.
Let's say around 5 kilometers. The first time
5 kilometers? Man, that's deeper than they had mentioned in the actual conference when they talked about first 648 meters underground, then they mentioned 1.2 kilometers, and then they mentioned 2 kilometers. Now he's talking 5.
we saw these shafts. We were, me and Corrado told me, Filippo, what are those things? No, Corrado, that's noise. The first day, the first week, the first month, But the second month we say, Corrado, we have changed the radar, we have changed images, we have changed everything, and always these shafts were completely visible. And so, how you say, by our consciousness, we announce it to everyone with a certain probability that is very high. People, there are the shafts.
So
with a certain probability. Well, here's the thing, though. As I say, oh my gosh, Armando Mei, goodness gracious. Anyways, out of the three speakers, Mei, Biondi, and Malanga, Biondi is the only one that I'm willing to believe. However, what he just stated here doesn't really increase the certainty of the shafts being under there. I'm just attacking the argument as any academically oriented mind would expect me to. Precisely because I'm very excited about this and I wish this was true, but I have to attack the argument to reinforce its validity. That's how it works. If you're someone who believes this and the fact that I'm attacking the argument offends you, then you don't know how the scientific method works, how academy works. It's not a matter of I'm gonna make a statement and then if you attack it, I'm offended. That's not how it works. If you're confident about your statements, then my attacks will be a good thing for you, because then you can demolish the attacks and confirm and give even more validity to your original statement. All that matters is the truth, not what we want there to be under the pyramids. Facts over feelings. Having said that, my problem is a little bit with interpretation, because I think at this point, Mr. Biondi, in this statement that he just made, seems to be connecting the certainty that they have that there is something down there to the certainty that these are in fact shafts, and maybe even what they have interpreted them to be, which is represented by the 3D model that we all have seen. I think these two things are completely separate. Hopefully they will say that.
We announce it to everyone with a certain probability that is very high. People, there are the shafts.
So we are sure that under the pyramids are the structure we showed during the conference.
Do keep in mind that this man, Armando Mei, is also sure of something else. He's sure that there are the halls of Amenti down there. He's sure that 36,000 years ago is when the Giza Plateau should be dated rather than 10,000 years ago. However, the evidence that he has provided to back up that claim is completely non-existent. So I don't care what Armando Mei is sure of. Please point the camera at Filippo Biondi again. Thank you.
Mars, maybe Mars, that has dedicated missions that are at this moment orbiting around Mars. Why not? Can be very an opportunity to scan maybe something that is located on that planet.
This is not.
I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I would say first you need to provide more data to prove that it works on Earth. As I was suggesting, scan mines that absolutely go 4,000 meters underneath the ground, as I said on my previous video. Scan those. Let's see if you can see the tunnels inside. Scan the freaking labyrinth under Paris. That would be good, by the way, to have if it works. The three examples that they've shown, and then the pyramids of Giza, are not enough to then start spending the amount of money and budget needed to do this all the way to Mars. I would say replicate, replicate, replicate. That's all science is about, right? Replicate.
The first time when a possible existence of a city in the underground of Giza exists.
90-degree angles, spirals, rooms, something straight. No, they are not natural. I'm sorry.
The only way then the purpose of the pyramids is the conjunction between archaeology and science. This is the only way to understand what happened in the ancient past.
So make the 3D model. We have analyzed 1 year of tomographies, maybe 200 tomographies. 2 computers, 24 hours, 7 days were processing tomographies. So
that's the part that I keep being mildly, mind you, annoyed by both him and Mr. Malanga. They keep mentioning computers. Malanga specifically mentioned AI, yet they don't tell us what softwares are you using. Is this ChatGPT that we're talking about? We need to know what type of AI you're using to interpret the data. And as I mentioned on my previous video, do keep in mind that Corrado Malanga publicly stated that AI never makes mistakes, which is a statement that confirms that he doesn't understand how AI language models specifically, but in general AI works. So the simple fact that now Mr. Biondi is telling us, oh no, but we use computers 24 hours, 24/7, constantly processing. Okay, what software was used? How do we know that that's reliable? What questions, what are the prompts? We need to know that. Otherwise, this is just shock factor, but it does not increase the validity of the 3D representation, the 3D models.
So we have at least 200 tomographies acquired with different, let's say, tomographic lines, different images, and different satellite systems. Different everything, same results.
Different satellite systems, I think he means the fact that they utilized 2 satellites. That's something that sometimes people missed from the conference. They did mention specifically that they used 2 satellites. Now, before we continue, I would like to talk about a problem that has been really getting worse with each passing day, and that is the problem of spam. Literally, my phone is about to blow up with the amount of spam messages that I get, and don't you even get me started on my email. So, the question is, how do they get your personal information? Most likely, they bought it. There is a whole market out there that most of you are probably not aware of where your personal information is bought and sold. And I'm talking your name, your age, your phone number, where you live, your email address, possibly even bank information and whatnot, and of course login credentials. Not to mention what you buy online, your browsing history, and all of this information is constantly sold because of these massive lists. Now, all of this is clearly bad news, but the good news is the sponsor of this video, Incogni. All of us have the right to demand these websites to remove our names and personal information from their lists, but this is a very time-consuming and quite complicated task, and that's why Incogni is the perfect tool, because that's what they do. They go out and demand that these sites take your name and information off their lists. And this is great not only for the obvious reason, your personal privacy, but also because this information on these lists can be used for identity theft or even to gather information to increase your insurance premium. Yeah, that's the thing. And really, all you need to do, 3 things. 1, sign up for the service. 2, give them permission to act in your behalf. 3, relax and watch them do their work. On the dashboard, you can literally monitor what the website is doing for you, the number of requests sent, the number that have been processed, and the completed ones. So, if you too want to improve your online privacy, then click the link in the description and you'll be doing 2 things. 1, you'll help supporting the channel, and 2, you will get access to an amazing discount from Incogni. Go to incogni.com/Metatron or click the link in the description and use the code Metatron to get an exclusive 60% off your annual Incogni plan. And massive thanks to Incogni for sponsoring my video.
Today, I am speaking with Professor Filippo Biondi, who's also joined by investigative journalist and researcher Armando Mei, 2 members of the Khafre Pyramid Project, the team who recently stunned the world with incredible scans and 3D images showing spiraling structures extending deep below the Khafre Pyramid and across the Giza Plateau. Now, these claims have since gone viral around the world, inviting equal parts amazement and skepticism. And so today, I hope we can clear up some of the misconceptions and really get to the bottom of what the team believes they have discovered in Egypt underneath the sands of the Giza Plateau and the Khafre Pyramid. So Professor Filippo Biondi is a signal processing researcher specializing in synthetic aperture radar technologies. He has a PhD in telecommunications engineering from the University of L'Aquila, and he has held academic positions at institutions including Sapienza University of Rome and the University of Strathclyde in Scotland. His research is focused on synthetic aperture radar, or SAR technology, Doppler tomography, and underground imaging. And he is...
All of this is why I'm willing to listen to Professor Filippo Biondi, by the way. All of this.
Now dedicated primarily towards his project called Harmonic SAR, which aims to advance the overall development and deployment of SAR technologies, the same technologies that have been deployed in these recent studies of the Giza Plateau, which the team believes have revealed a massive network of subterranean structures extending below the Khafre Pyramid and the Giza Plateau itself.
Man, wouldn't that be amazing, though? Wouldn't that be amazing? The way this is explained now, every time I hear it, particularly the way he is putting it now, kind of puts the element of skepticism in my mind to the side for a moment, and I dream about it. I'm like, oh, that would be amazing.
And joining him today is investigative journalist and researcher Armando Mei, who specializes in ancient civilizations with a particular emphasis on Egyptology. Armando contributes his archaeological and historical expertise to the Khafre Project team, and it's great to have him with us. So it's a pleasure.
Not a great contribution, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Anderson. I've reviewed the entire conference in Italian. As a speaker, I don't know if Armando Mei was worse or if Corrado Malanga was the worst one. I'm not sure. It's difficult to really make my mind on that one, but literally almost everything that Armando Mei has presented does not contribute to anything. Extremely unprofessional, horribly presented, terrible justification for any of his claims. It was just a mess. Also, if we read in the pinned comment made by Project Unity here, it says, in this exclusive interview, I am joined by both Professor Filippo Biondi, an investigative researcher and Egyptologist, Armando Mei. Here's my question, since this on the video you say he's interested in Egyptology, but here you call him an Egyptologist. Is he an Egyptologist? Because I asked one of the members of my team who is an Egyptologist PhD, and it doesn't sound like Armando Mei has this qualification to me. So could you please justify this, Mr. Anderson? Is he an actual Egyptologist, or does he just like Egyptian history? Because if just liking Egyptian history and putting down some time to research it is enough, then I am also an Egyptologist, yet I'm not, which is why I pay a professional Egyptologist to help me do my research and qualify my statements on my videos. Just so we're clear.
To speak with both of you, but Filippo, the findings from the team have caused shockwaves around the world. There's been a lot of excitement and there's been a lot of skepticism. So I hope that this conversation will clear the air for people so that we can have a better understanding of what you and the team behind the Khafre Project have been doing. So there's been, like I said, a lot of critiques in the wider Western media from archaeologists and radar specialists saying that your claims of structures reaching 2 kilometers below the ground are not possible with the conventional technologies being deployed through synthetic aperture radar, through ground penetrating radar, that it's simply...
Which is a correct statement, by the way, but the only thing is that in theory, if this technique is new, then it wouldn't apply because it's new. Of course, the simple fact that they say it works is not enough. We need, in my opinion, more proof that the technology works. But to be fair and play devil's advocate here, someone who is an expert on conventional SAR technology, I mean, this is a new technique. So it's like it's different. He's the guy who invented it. So in theory, he's the only one who understands it. That, of course, does not put him outside of the box of possible critique. He needs to prove it, but just to dot my I's.
Simply not possible for your team to obtain high-fidelity imagery or signatures so deep below the Earth. But as I've come to understand it through research and through listening to what you and the team had to say during your presentation in March, you're responsible for deploying a different technique, a different method from what I can understand.
Yes,
you have patented this method, applied for it in 2022 under the title of Synthetic Aperture Radar Underground, Undersea, Under Ice, and Inside Distributed Targets Tomographic Doppler Imaging. Now, that's a lot of big words, and I would really appreciate it if you could explain in detail how your method is different, because this is definitely the main critique I'm seeing. This is one of the big issues, and it seems to be based on the assumption that you are using the conventional techniques, but you're not doing that. You're using this patented method of your own, and I think it's worth explaining in as much detail as you can, and also try to explain so that people who are not scientists can understand as well. I think it's very important that the general public understand the difference between the conventional SAR scanning and these techniques that you're deploying.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your nice and very long presentation of ourselves. First of all, I would like...
Of course, he means introduction. It's just that in Italian, it's kind of the same word. Presentazione.
Sorry for my English, because I don't speak every day this language, but we will manage to do it well.
We appreciate Professor Biondi.
Yes, I noticed that there was a bit of criticism about the technique we used for scanning inside pyramids. But I tell you that criticism was raised by people that weren't deeply inside of scientific world. I tell you, I saw a lot of debunkers, a lot of YouTubers, one physicist that I can't say her name, but never mind.
Sabine Hossenfeier. Sabine, I just said it.
One professor of radar that is specialized in ground penetrating radar. We are a community of about 200 or 300 guys, people. We are a restricted community, yes, but nobody told me anything about my technique, so that's good.
All right, that's a little bit of a misrepresentation. I don't know if it's due to his English or if it's because he's actually trying to shift the goalpost. I don't know, so I'm not going to make an accusation. Just to be clear, what he's saying here, yes, there is a lot of criticism, but the criticism doesn't come from the scientists, because the group of scientists, he said about 200, who actually understand the technology, no one said anything, exception being Sabine Hossenfelder, but then again, the rest are just YouTubers and debunkers, and therefore, those critiques should not be valid and do not have any weight. This is what he's trying to say here. I don't think that's fair, because, for example, if he or Jay Anderson were to put me in the pool of people in the group that have presented criticisms, for example, in my case, my criticisms were not about his technique at all. If anything, my criticisms were about the way the interpretations were made by Corrado Malanga and the way the probability or likelihood of these interpretations to be correct were justified by Armando Mei with his introduction. Those two are the areas that I criticize. I know they didn't mention me. I'm a good representation in this case of the type of criticism that he just stated doesn't exist. The only thing I criticized specifically about his section of the presentation is the fact that he did not put enough information when it comes to the other 3 locations where they did test the technology. I wish he had given us a lot more information about those, but I'm not going to repeat myself since I've already said it, and I'll put a few links in the description if you want to see the specific comebacks that I used for that. But I never mentioned the technique itself. I don't know if it works. I haven't got a clue if it works, so I didn't criticize that. But that does not represent the entirety of the criticism that has been extended against their work. It is the interpretation of the scans and the justification, the historical justification of the scans that is absolutely being criticized as it should.
So I just want to puntualize something that is crucial for understanding well the technique that we have used in scanning inside the Giza Plateau. So this research started in 2022. At that time, me and Professor Corrado Malanga, that we was studying the Khufu Pyramid. We used in the past some synthetic aperture radar for scanning inside that pyramid. Then we had a lot of...
So here's the thing. This is the first, I believe, synthetic red aperture radar Doppler tomography. This is the first paper, as we see Corrado Malanga and Filippo Biondi. Starting from the fact that I do not believe and strongly resent the idea of guilty by association. I think anyone should be allowed to associate with whomever they want, not to mention that simply because someone associates with someone else, it doesn't mean that they share all of those opinions, ideas, and presuppositions. With that being said, however, the fact that Professor Biondi published together with Corrado Malanga, meaning this guy here, does make me question the ability of Professor Biondi to correctly assess and therefore select capable collaborators. And if you want to know why I think so little of Corrado Malanga, I would strongly suggest you to check out this video of mine when I translate what he believes and the sort of stuff he pushes in his publications. And then I would refer you to this other video of mine I watched the 4-hour conference to see why Armando Mei is... yeah.
results, and then we moved, joining also Armando Mei in the community. We we founded this research group that is called the Khafre Research, the Khafre Project SAR Technology Research Group. So, according to this, I want to explain how technically my method works to everyone. So, so everyone can know how this technique works, and so maybe somebody can also replicate the experiments.
That's excellent. The fact I think he meant to say once and for all at that point. Maybe I can't be sure about that. Still, the fact that he's asking for replication is a good sign. That's why I say I don't have a problem with Professor Biondi. It's the other two.
It's well known that radar is the interaction of radar with or of radars with targets is only superficial. So electromagnetic waves interacts with matter principally superficially. So a synthetic aperture radar, which is a payload installed on satellites that are low Earth orbit satellites that orbits around the Earth at approximately 600 kilometers with respect to the surface of the Earth, has heliosynchrous orbital characteristics that in this case...
I actually missed that one. I don't know what he said there, but I understood everything else. It's just idiosyncros? What did he say that?
Heliosynchrous orbital
I don't know what he means.
Characteristics that in this case, radars scans the Earth and receives the response, the backscattering energy of the Earth. In this context, as I told you before, the interaction is only superficial. We can't penetrate matter using electromagnetic waves.
Right.
It's not possible.
Okay.
I repeat, it is not possible. A lot of years that I study synthetic aperture radar, so I have to tell you that synthetic aperture radar is completely different with respect to conventional radars. Synthetic aperture radar is another thing, because as the word announces,
suggests,
the name synthetic, it is something different.
Right.
Why synthetic? Synthetic because we synthesize a long aperture in the azimuth direction in order to generate, sorry if I speak...
What direction?
Azimuth direction. We synthesize a long aperture in the azimuth direction in order to generate, sorry if I speak technical, but this is the moment, I think.
It's okay, no problem.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
To synthesize spatial resolution. What is the
spatial resolution? Right.
Spatial resolution? The spatial resolution is a distance, so it's the minimum distance for which two targets can be distinct. This can be detected separately.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So,
like a sort of a minimum resolution, if you will.
The more the spatial resolution, the better are the electromagnetic images that we want to produce of the Earth, because synthetic aperture radar, they are used for remote sensing, in order to study the Earth, to capture electromagnetic pictures of the Earth. According to this, we are now moving in details about my technique. SAR images are produced in two steps. The first step is made by range focusing. Range focusing is performed by convolution between a chirp signal that I have as a reference with the electromagnetic impulses that I am receiving. Okay, so I have the first step, which is an image that is range focused. From raw data, we arrive to a range focused image. Okay, then we move to a middle step that is located between the first and the second. The middle step is called motion compensation. We have to compensate the location of the targets due to the motion of the satellite. Okay. Then we move to the second step, which
it would be nice to know if all of these steps, which of these steps are also common ground, overlapping with the, let's call it, traditional way of using SAR technology. Because the fact that he's explaining the steps, I appreciate that. But where is the difference? Like, do they also have these steps when they use conventional SAR technology? Or does this only, is the methodology completely different? That would be a question I would ask, possibly, hopefully, receiving an answer. If not from him directly, then maybe from someone who understands it, who understands conventional SAR technology.
Which is the azimuth focusing. And here acts my technique.
All right.
Why? Because azimuth focusing is made by compressing the Doppler bandwidth. And the Doppler bandwidth is recast inside 0 Hertz to maybe 20, 30, or 40 kilohertz, which are acoustic, which is acoustic information. So the azimuth focusing process is made by sound.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, by sound.
Yeah, he did explain that it was sound during the conference as well. In this case, he's adding the steps, which I appreciate. But yeah, we do know that that's one of the main differences.
Then, how works my technique? Instead to synthesize in order to have the maximum azimuth spatial resolution, we only use a part of the orbit to produce a lower azimuth resolution synthetic aperture radar image. But the rest of the orbit, we use the rest of the orbit in order to extrapolate, to grab from the Earth, from the Earth surface, the sound, in order to utilize the radar as a mic.
It's the same thing. Utilize and use is the same.
Microphone.
Right.
A
Okay.
giantest microphone that is located in the space. Okay? This microphone can ascoltare, how you say?
Hear or listen.
Here can record the sound of the surface of the Earth for 20 seconds, let's say 20 seconds, and recording this sound, we can say that it is a sufficient statistic in order to produce a tomographic image of the inside of the Earth. Why? Because the sound propagates only in matter. And here we are changing our mind, because we are not anymore using the electromagnetic waves, but we move to another point of view in order to process the sound information. And the sound information propagates only inside the Earth. And the sound interacts only with matter. Interacting only with matter and using a method for record this sound from space, we had a perfect condition in order to explore inside the Giza Plateau. So
all of this explanation is great. It discusses, however, only one of two problems. It addresses the idea that this is how we produced these images, right? And now he's reassuring us that it does work. So these images are authentic. That's what he's saying. I'm willing to accept that. The second issue, however, that hasn't been addressed up to this point is how you go from there is something underneath. We know it has this specific shape and this length, but we don't know what it is, to, oh no, we do know what it is. It is artificial, it is man-made, it's not natural. That's one of the statements that they made during the conference. And these are rooms, they are the rooms of Amenti, the shafts are pillars, they are used to support the structures of the pyramids. Like, all of that has nothing to do with the science behind how the images were acquired. So I'm willing to accept that maybe the science does work. I don't know. I have no way to know what this man is saying here is real or not, but I'm happy, for sake of argument, to take it as at face value and say, you know what, let's say that it's all real. How do you go from these images represent something to, well, this something is pillars that have got glass-like transparent spirals that go all the way around them, and they reach these cubes that we believe are rooms, specifically the chambers of Amenti. That's the part that I still haven't seen justified in any way, shape or form, and any attempt at justifying this interpretation so far has failed miserably. Once again, I refer you to my translation of both Armando Mei and Corrado Malanga's sections of the conference.
The Doppler bandwidth that we have estimated, it's, let's say, a completely acoustic bandwidth, so belonging between 0 Hertz to 20 kilohertz. So it's perfect. We used the technique we used to...
You should tell us why that makes it perfect, by the way. Often professors do have this problem. They understand something, so they don't know how to dumb it down for people who are not in the field. I do know how to do that, by the way, because that's something I was pretty good at when I was an educator for 10 years, within the school system specifically. In this case, for instance, I would add a little note. You need to tell us why that makes it perfect.
Invert the model, so once we have recorded 20 seconds of acoustic information of the Earth, of the surface of the Earth, we have used the so-called tomographic inversion in order to retrieve the acoustic photos.
Retrieve the acoustic photos. Right, and those are the ones that still haven't been processed and interpreted into the 3D model, though.
Focus at the photos of the internal of the Earth. This technique, first of all, was before to use this technique on the Giza Plateau, I made a lot of experiments. This technique born for performing the infrastructure monitoring of large bridges, in order to retrieve principal component analysis of vibrations of the bridge. In this context, we made a very interesting project in collaboration with European Space Agency.
That's interesting.
In order to analyze this issue. And then you can see, if you go on the web, you can read my papers about the bridge monitoring.
Am I correct that you also use this for the Gran Sasso National Laboratory and the Mosul Dam as well in Iraq?
Yes.
And those are the ones that actually begin to matter, because bridges, I mean, great, but they're out in the open, and here you're saying that it can go all the way down to 5,000 kilometers underneath the Earth. So bridges can be interesting to figure out and understand how the technology works above ground. But then again, when it comes to its accuracy, not only underneath the ground, but even under the water table, I don't think the bridges can be used in any way, shape or form. When it comes to the Gran Sasso Laboratory, as was mentioned by Mr. Anderson here, yes, they did use it. The problem with that is that I hope he's going to explain that, because here's the thing. The Gran Sasso Laboratory, as I explained, is not underneath the Earth, meaning below ground zero. It's basically inside a mountain, aka the Gran Sasso mountain. So you can picture it as a tunnel. In fact, it is built inside a tunnel, but it is on the same height as the A24 highway that connects to it. Same height. Still, the fact that it's inside the mountain means that there is a lot of rock. On top of it, the SAR technology will need to go through. So I'm not saying that it's completely irrelevant. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that during the conference, he specifically told us that if you measure the distance from the peak of the Gran Sasso mountain, specifically in this case we're talking about the Grande Corno, all the way inside on a vertical direct line all the way down to the laboratories, that would be 1,400 meters of rock. However, one, there is no water table in between because this is not below the earth anyways, and two, does the radar actually go all the way specifically on top of it, and therefore the technology has to deal with exactly 1,400 meters of rock, or is it slanted? As by the way, they do mention that oftentimes it's slanted, it's on the conference, and therefore it wouldn't. If it's taking it from the sides, or from the sides, not from the peak, then the amount of rock would be different. I wish he explained that. Hopefully he does here.
I used the same technique. You can find the results on my website, www.harmonixab.com. And so where I have produced the inside the scanning of the Gran Sasso. The Gran Sasso is
You see, I told you. Look, tunnels, and then you go inside the mountain. That's what it is.
Huge mountain where I born in L'Aquila, Italy, central part of Italy. Were inside in the 80s, thanks to our professor Zikiki, who is a physicist, decided to build up a huge laboratory inside the Gran Sasso.
I don't think he decided it in the 80s. I think in the 80s is when it got completed. They started the project in the 60s.
Why? Because it was an optimal environment to study so-called muons or neutrinos.
Yeah.
It is very interesting. Once I went to visit the laboratory, and the principal project that they are working for is called the Gerda Project, seeking the Majorana particle.
Right.
It's very, very interesting.
What I'm going to do is that I'm going to divide this in two parts. This is going to be part one, and we're going to stop here. Up to this point, they haven't convinced me when it comes to how they justify the conclusion, the interpretation, aka the 3D model. Maybe they will. In the second part, as I continue watching, next time, maybe in a couple of days, perhaps they will convince me, but up to this point they haven't. The reason why I'm not doing this in one sitting is because, let's put it this way, respect for the channel, since this is their exclusive interview, then this way, if people have enjoyed this up to this point, then you can click the link in the description or the pinned comment to actually watch the rest of the interview on the channel. Maybe give them the like and the view. It's their content after all. But I will be coming back and I will watch the rest of the conference, of this interview, and then we'll see if that changes my mind. Up to this point, not impressed. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for my next daily upload. Goodbye. Also, don't forget to check out the amazing offer by Incogni through the link